Hello and welcome to episode 64 of the HamCorp training manual. In this episode, we will make some small improvements around the base, specifically with redstone and radon, and also set up the first Volcanus. I just got done upgrading our glowstone centrifuge to an industrial centrifuge, so this should help alleviate my redstone shortage, but it's going to take some time because the mercury generation over here really gobbles up that redstone. In fact, I really don't think this is fast enough even now. So I may have to scale this up. By the way, something I discovered. Because my nuclear reactors are running all the time, this LSC is constantly gaining energy, and I discovered that once it hits 100% capacity, it actually turns itself off. As you can see, it's like flickering on and off. Normally it just turns off and stays off, but what I've done is I've added this machine controller cover and set it to disable with redstone. So now it is basically constantly trying to turn itself on when it turns off. Really weird. I don't know why it turns itself off when it's full. I think that's intended behavior, but I don't understand why. But anyway, this is a way to get around that. I also automated the quad fuel rods for thorium here. So here I have an export bus with the quad fuel rods, the full durability ones with a crafting card. And then I pull out and put into an interface the depleted fuel rods with a filter, so I don't pull out anything else. I've also upgraded some of these multis to EV. They were still at HV, believe it or not, and I'm slowly making moves to replace everything and upgrade everything to EV, at least where it makes sense. If I'm already making stuff in 1 or 2 ticks, then there's really no point in overclocking, and I'll just leave those as it is. But other stuff that's slower, I will be upgrading. Also, here's the radon loop. It's quite slow, as you know. I have been using a bit of radon. There are some smelts, some blast furnace smelts that use radon to go a little faster, so I've been using this radon. But now I think it's easier to get plutonium-239, so it might be worth upgrading to this recipe. This is significantly faster. Another major bottleneck that I've been facing is that my EBFs are just way too slow. I guess that's a feature of EBFs, but there is a GT++ version of the EBF, which is the Volcanus. It needs a few new alloys, but they're all quite doable actually. 3 different types of Hastelloy, X, W, and N, and all of them can be made now using our alloy blast smelter. We're also going to need this pyrotheum heating vent, which is a few more IV circuits. Also miraging steel 250, I don't remember if I've made that yet, but it shouldn't be too hard. As well as miraging steel 300. Looking at the elements here, I think this is doable. And the Volcanus is basically just an EBF, but it also uses blazing pyrotheum as part of its crafting cycle. So we do need a supply of blazing pyrotheum. Luckily, this is easy to get. We get it from extracting pyrotheum dust, and pyrotheum dust we can make using redstone, sulfur, coal, and blaze powder. So that's good. The only issue is I'm not making redstone fast enough, and actually upgrading to this multi-block centrifuge has introduced another problem, which is that now I'm out of glowstone dust. This extractor is too slow. And I imagine that if I upgrade this extractor, I'm not going to be making Glowflower fast enough either. So I'm going to have to come up with a solution here for redstone. This is a pretty major problem because redstone is used all over the place. Alright, I have a little bit of a band-aid solution for now. I set up a miner on a redstone vein. I'm also low on graphite, so I'm also going to be collecting that with this miner. It's a multi-block miner. And what I've done is I've changed this setup a little bit for how the ore is imported into our ore processing. Before, I just imported it straight from the ender chest, but once the ender chest was full of stuff, all of my miners would stop. So what I've done here is I've now connected this ender chest to 4 compressed chests, so our buffer is much larger, and I'm importing from each of these compressed chests. I feel like there's some smart way that I can just use a single import bus and like P2Ps or storage buses and interfaces or something and make like a micro subnet over here, but I just couldn't figure it out. So I was like, fuck it, and I just put down 4 import buses with acceleration cards. So now at least I'll be processing some redstone. It's going to be quite slow because I'm mining so many different ores. This is gonna be very noisy in here for a long time. By the way, there are new sounds. The ore washing plant makes a sound now. Thermal refinery has a new sound. There's a lot of new sounds. It's kind of hard to hear because the macerators are so fucking loud, but it's cool. So hopefully this helps a little bit, and now I'm going to get back to working on the Volcanus. Now the Vulcanus is really nice. It runs at 220% of the base speed, uses 90% of the EU, and has 8 parallels. So all of the lower tier recipes will be much faster. Of course, the ones that are closer to IV are not going to go quite as fast because it won't be able to use the parallels, but everything else is going to go super fast. And it seems like I have run out of space here in the blasting hall. I could expand out this way, but I did want to use this for auto crafting. I think I'm going to make a second blasting hall just right over here. And I think I'm going to just do kind of an exact copy of this design. Forgot to mention before, but I made HSSS coil blocks. Now these, according to the quest book, are not strictly necessary, but they are nice to have before getting the next tier of coil blocks. So I decided, why not? I finish a quest and I get some decent coil blocks. And also, they look so good. So I'm going to build the Volcanus over here. I'm going to build it as if it's going to be a quad in the future, but I don't know if it is going to be a quad in the future. I guess we'll see. Now for the Volcanus, we need to supply blazing pyrotheum, as I mentioned before. And the Volcanus uses 10 liters of blazing pyrotheum per second during operation. And this fluid extractor recipe allows us to create 250 liters in 10 seconds. So that's 25 per second. So just one fluid extractor will be able to keep up with 2.5 Volcani. And a single mixer at MV will be able to make enough pyrotheum dust to keep up with that. I'm going to make an HV mixer and an HV fluid extractor and just hook them up right here. Now, of course, the pyrotheum dust needs a couple of different things. I think we have pretty vast quantities of all of these except for redstone, but that's kind of a problem that I'm hoping is resolved already. So let's see. 103k sulfur, that's fine. 17k coal dust, 2000 blaze powder, but I also make blaze rods, which can be turned into powder. And I know that these are pretty much infinite because they're from the farm. And as for redstone, no redstone. Well, I've augmented this mercury generation with quicksilver, which we get from smelting cinnabar. So now we're full on mercury, and I think all it is at this point is this input bus needs to fill up, and then we'll start getting a backlog of infinite redstone. It's a little dangerous playing this way, because it is possible that I run out of redstone again, so it's something I really should address more concretely. Alright, I know what I'm gonna do. First of all, I've noticed that my glowflowers are all like really low tier. This is like 111. I think most of these might be 111. So I'm going to stat these up using Gary the crop bot. And then after that, I'm going to upgrade this extractor from HV to a multi-block EV. And I think, hopefully, that will be able to keep up with our glowstone and redstone needs. I haven't done the math to verify that, but surely it's good enough, right? In this case, that's going to be the dissection apparatus. This is the multi-block extractor. Do be careful to not make this one, the large fluid extractor. That's different. We also need this for stuff like, I remember and I've been reminded that there's a bottleneck in the plat line where the slowest step was the fluid extraction. So I do want to go back at some point and put in this large fluid extractor. It's pretty big, so I'm going to have to find a nice spot for it in there. But that's for later. For now, we're doing the dissection apparatus. Pretty straightforward recipe, just a lot of stainless steel, a few EV circuits. Yeah, not bad. One important thing to note about the dissection apparatus is that the item pipe casing tier is important. You get 8 parallels per tier of pipe casing. The platinum pipe casing is tier 4, and that gives us 32 parallels. And of course, the Glowflower extraction recipe uses 2 Glowflower at a time, so this is going to be a whole stack at a time. Also, the higher tier pipe casings were just too expensive. Alright, I want to see how fast this is. Wow, really fast. 1.25 seconds per stack. This single slot input bus is not big enough. I'm going to upgrade that. But nice, this is going to alleviate our glowstone issues. And also, the new miner that I set up is mining redstone right now, so we're going to have a lot of redstone. There we go, we're already up to 8,000. It was at 0 like 30 minutes ago. Statting up these glowflowers is going to take quite some time. So I'm just going to get back to working on my blazing pyrotheum. I have the setup done. It's a little jank, it's a little ugly, but it's fine. To turn this machine on, you actually do need to input 10 liters of blazing pyrotheum. And in that process, I discovered that if we do run out of blazing pyrotheum and the machine shuts off as a result, it's also going to create a maintenance problem. It's not a big deal, but just something to keep in mind. I was worried that it's going to use the blazing pyrotheum constantly, even when it's not actively crafting something, but that doesn't seem to be the case, so that's good. Now I just need to hook this up and start migrating a few recipes. And after that, I think I'll start pushing towards LUV. So I'm going to need the assembly line, rhodium-plated palladium, and keep soldering on, which I think should be quite doable. I just need indoloi, which needs indium, which is a little gross, but what are you going to do? And then the rhodium-plated palladium, I think this is going to be totally fine. But the assembly line is somewhat complicated, I think, at least for me, because I've never tried to automate it, and I know that that's kind of a challenge. Let's do this. I'm going to gather all of these components, and I'll also do the indoloi and rhodium-plated palladium quests. The indoloi, I'm just going to checkbox, but I'm going to teach the recipe to the blast smelter. And I think, yeah, I have all of these things. Shouldn't be an issue. A couple more things. So I am indeed mining crushed plutonium-239. So I can quite easily upgrade the radon loop now. And I think I will, because I'm very low on radon, and rhodium-plated palladium has a nice radon smelt here, which is 100 seconds faster than using helium. And I'm just getting around to hooking up this vulcanus now, and I realized I can actually use these now. So these are output buses and hatches that directly interface with applied energistics. So I do want to use these because they're a lot less laggy. I haven't used them till now because they were being changed in the latest update to have a maximum cache size. Before you could infinitely cache items in these, and that felt a bit cheaty, which wouldn't have stopped me before. But I knew that it was being changed, so I didn't want to put these down until the change was done. But now the change is done, so I can start using these. So let me get all three of these, and then I'll talk about how each one works. They're pretty simple. So we have the stocking input bus, which I'll come back to, and then the output bus and output hatch. The output bus and hatch are quite simple. They're quite literally just an output bus and hatch. But for example, here's my output bus for the Volcanus. I'm just going to replace it with an ME output bus, and now I can just connect a cable to this. This slot is not for items. This slot is for a storage cell if you want to increase the buffer size of the bus. By default, it can cache up to 1600 items, which is plenty. So I'm not going to use the cell here. And this you can connect to a cable, and this uses one channel. The output hatch works the same way. You just connect it to your multi-block and to a channel, and it has a cache size of 128,000 liters. And you can also, just add a fluid cell to increase that if you need. The stocking input bus, I'll explain once we're doing the radon loop. So with the improved radon loop, I'm going to make a few changes here. First of all, I'm not going to use a basic furnace anymore. I'm going to use a multi-smelter, because I've noticed that this is kind of the bottleneck in the speed of this loop here. Also, I won't be using this compressor setup for making air cells. Instead, I've made an air intake hatch, which just directly generates air from air. And I'm going to move this whole setup over here, because currently this whole setup is actually not on the subnet. And also, it's still powered by benzene. So it's not even on this cable line. It's kind of its own isolated thing. So I'm going to refactor this and rebuild it over here, mostly because I need more space for the multi-smelter. But then I can also connect it to this EV power line and have everything run at EV. And because this is an LCR, it's going to get a perfect overclock and go 4 times as fast. So assuming my multi-smelter can keep up with the plutonium dust to ingot smelting, this is going to make 3200 radon in 75 seconds, which is, I think, way faster than what we make right now. Yeah, right now we make 800 in 600 seconds, so that's really slow compared to what we're about to get. Here is the new setup. So the multi-smelter is quite fast now. I think it does the whole stack of plutonium-239 in like 12 seconds or something like that. The air intake hatch is working. It just generates air. And finally, for the loop, we need to supply uranium-238. And that's where the stocking input bus comes in. Honestly, there's probably better places to use stocking input buses because there's so many slots. but this was just the first thing I needed to do after making the stocking input bus, so I figured I could just show it off here. It's as simple as opening the interface and then putting in your ghost item of uranium-238 that supplies it from your ME network, and you can turn this on. No valid recipe found because I'm forgetting my program circuit. How embarrassing. And now we turn it on. 18 seconds for 800 radon. Actually, I think I'm gonna make another stack of plutonium and put it in this circulation. That way this chem reactor can keep running while the previous batch of dust is smelted again. Oh, cool. This is much faster radon. Alright, I'm about to request this 64 rhodium-plated palladium craft, and I want to see how fast the Volcanus is. So this is a... what is it? An HV recipe? So this should go with some parallels. Ooh, 3 minutes for 8. That's pretty good. New sound effect too, different than the blast furnace. That's crazy. Normally, in an HV blast furnace, this would have taken 6.5 minutes for 1. Yeah, this was worth it. Thank you for watching this episode of the HamCorp Training Manual. In the next episode, we will set up the assembly line. Employees are hereby reminded to enjoy their winter holiday, and that end-of-year bonuses will be sent out at some point. Asking where your bonus is will result in a cancellation of the end-of-year bonus. See you next time.